I know this might be weird, but have you ever felt sorry for a tree? The final soldier left, fighting an endless battle against the decay of a once lush and lively forest, waiting, buying its time for the right moment to fall. Perhaps not to be cut by the hands of a man, but to go down on its own terms. Maybe to go down swinging, even when it is no match for its enemy. Depictions of such things are quite rare in fictional storytelling, and yet, when you glance upon the endless amount of fiction there exists, you can't help but notice that the world that the characters occupy, the world which the hero conquers upon their adventure, the magic that is wielded within the environment, none of these literary elements would make any sense without the world building. But I feel like in the immersion of the storyline, we forget to pay attention to the things around us, and we often treat the world as some kind of background noise. But behind every fictional world lies emotion and intention, and it's only when you stop and stare at these worlds that you understand the feelings that it portrays. And as silly as it might sound to you, it's only then when you feel sympathy for the world building. But what does it mean to sympathize with something that's inanimate? How do you feel emotions for a rock? How do you feel anything for a landscape rendered for the safe passage of a character that we are so programmed to relate to? How do you split that sympathy so that you could offer even a bit of it to the lifeless objects that surround the characters? It starts with the type of world that is being portrayed. For instance, in Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, the toxic jungle is a symbol of places neglected because of pollution. It is often ironic the way humans devastate ecosystems as a whole in the chase for power or wealth, only to then put yellow tape over large portions of land to ward off the unknown bystander who might just enjoy a walk in nature. And in this film, a vast majority of people misunderstand the toxic jungle, for some are afraid, while the others are indifferent to the world. They're in constant fight with these creatures because they don't understand why they exist. Misunderstood worlds are one of the common entities that implores the audience to pay attention, at least to give it another chance, maybe to view things from a different perspective, so that at least you get the bigger picture. It's often a regular theme in Ghibli films, the present generation having to clean the mess of the past ones. And that is exactly the purpose of this world. The world building is the way it is because humans unleash their fury and wrath upon it, leaving it a toxic and desolate wasteland. The forest is simply trying to heal from this utter toxicity, cleaning up the clumsy deeds of the people who once resided there. And yes, does the Omu pose a threat to humans? I suppose it does. But it is through understanding the Sea of Decay, carefully observing the functioning of the world building, that the young princess of the Valley of the Wind saves her people from the wrath of the Omu. Nausicaa finds sympathy for the world around her. She understands what led the creatures to be what they are. And it is her compassion that reveals the true nature of this misunderstood world. It is her love for the world that reconnects humans with nature. In the deeply underrated TV series called Scavenger's Reign, the world is an intricate web of danger and allure. As an adventurer on the alien world of Vesta, you are offered no real survival manual. The beauty can be entrancing for sure, but at the very moment, it could entice you into a false sense of security. The characters can't really tell beauty apart from a well-laid trap of a complex organism. When you finish the first few episodes, you'd probably consider the whole planet to be an ungodly entity trying to chase you down. But the more you watch the series, the veil is slowly lifted from in front of you. It is only when the story progresses that you slowly comprehend the coherence of this world. It is only then when you realize that Vesta is alive and beautiful, and in its complexity, the most important thing of all, it doesn't really care about you. This world is kinda doing its own thing. It doesn't care if you're a human or not. It is simply how the world building works. Just because things don't seem very intuitive to the human mind, it doesn't mean that the world has no emotions, that it is mean and villainous. It is nothing like that at all. It appreciates life, just the way things are around here. The world is in a way misunderstood. But sometimes the world can be lost in translation. I mean, when Simon Stallonhawk's The Electric State was announced to be a film, I was skeptical at first, but I still had high hopes for the possibilities of what could be made out of his wondrous artworks. But then Netflix picked up the idea and gave it to the Russo brothers, and they sort of made this world into a set of a Marvel film. I kid you not, it is one of the greatest injustice to world building that I've seen in recent times. And I could sit here and talk about the thousands of grievances that I have with this adaptation, but I have already done that on my other channel. So here, I want to lend a hand of sympathy to the abandoned world building of Simon Stålenhag, which was the job the movie was intended to do, but again, we don't always get what we want, now do we? So let's go on a little tangent to talk about something that should be pretty basic for anyone who's ever taken a photo. So this is what you call a portrait. Be it a painting or a photo or even a piece of paper aligned this way, it is known as a portrait. But when you often say, I want to take a portrait photo, it is the dimensional quality of space that we intend. When what it actually conveys is the type of subject matter. A portrait often focuses on a single subject. It doesn't really care much for the background, for you are looking for intimacy, closeness to a subject in frame. But on the other hand, when I say landscape, no matter how old you are reminded of a horizontal sheet of paper, mountains and lakes and forests in the background, with perhaps also a house in the foreground. But look at the difference in what they convey. It is quite a basic understanding, but the reason why I talked about it with regards to the electric state is the fact that the filmmakers completely missed the aesthetic of the book. If you have read The Electric State, you would know that almost all the world is conveyed within large landscape art, where our main character is simply just a small piece of a greater puzzle. The world building here is supposed to be a character, something which the movie completely missed. But there is yet another kind of world that cries for your sympathy, not because it is misunderstood or misadapted, but rather such a world is mourning in a silent despair, for the world has now outlived its creators. Here, the world has ended, and what you occupy is the stillness of the post-apocalyptic gloom. In the anime/manga called The Girl's Last Tour, two girls inhabit such a vast and empty world. From the first few episodes alone, you can sense that the world has gone through some sort of perpetual war. The wreckage, the ruins, the abandonment of it all. It is sure enough evidence for something tragic. But although humanity is all but gone, the technology they had once acquired to dream so large, to fulfill their endeavors, and be a force to be reckoned with, that technology, it still exists in this gigantic labyrinthian world which now remains in the shadows. Here, the world still carries on, although there isn't much life left in it. The world is in ruins, but there is a silent beauty in all that's gone. You can't not sympathize with this desolate landscape, endless as the eyes could see. The world building, nothing more than a shell of what it once was, but programmed to keep doing its job. And I know we're living in a world where we all hate AI right now, and perhaps in some cases with good reason. But this world, it just gives you ample reasons to resonate with the inanimate. The AI systems don't fully comprehend the state of the world as they keep on doing what they were programmed to do. Some of the robots keep building while the others are malfunctioning. And my god, there is this one chapter called Oblivion that simply breaks your heart, even if it is for an AI. The girls stumble upon an AI, and it is initially happy that it finally got to enjoy some human company. It uses binary to write poetry when it's bored. But after helping the girls to safely pass through the megastructure, it silently asks for its own demise. The words, "So please let me end. I will likely be forced to continue to live until this city's backup power depletes." It is such a powerful moment in understanding the sadness of this world. It is slowly dying in the absence of its makers. The programs misfiring, the structures deteriorating, the passing rain and snow, almost a eulogy to the once great civilization and its people who existed there. It is such a poignant and melancholic ballad to the whole story. Similarly, the world in the manga Blom experiences the misfortunes of a parallel story. The world of Blom is virtually infinite. There are things here that defies the rules of physics, and out-of-control AI systems building megastructures that are beyond the comprehension of the ordinary mind. But the city here is not just big, it is in a way infected. It feels like a virus or an infection of a mechanical nature. a coding error that had gotten so bad that the world itself had lost meaning a long time ago. Time or space or even reality in this city is close to meaningless. Although it is easy to sympathize with the lone survivors of this world, in a way, isn't the tragedy of this story the world itself? Its scale is so vast that it seeks purpose from all those who gaze upon it, but the reality that the human mind will never be able to fully comprehend such a scale for a city, its absence and desolation, it only deepens the sadness of the world. At the end, all you can do is to step away and feel sorry for its suffering, to sympathize with its world building. But there is yet another world that suffers not silently. Its pain and despair is right there in front of you. In popular fictional stories, it is almost always a world that is shaped by the shadows of power and greed that meets such an awful fate. And every time I'm reminded of such a world, the scene that comes to my mind is in fact a filler scene from the extended edition of The Return of the King. While Frodo, Sam, and Gollum slowly approach the shadows of Mordor, there is a little moment when they pass the fallen statues of the old kings of Gondor. The landscape suggests that the world has now come to its absolute knees. The environment is bleak and filled with ruins of a bygone era. But then, all of a sudden, something beautiful happens.
Frodo, look. The king has got a crown again.
But the moment is only a passing one, as the golden rays of hope and resilience are covered by the dark clouds that remind you of the darker powers that are in this land. Come to think of it, it's quite the scene to be actually cut from the movie. But I digress. This moment right here, it represents the fleeting hope such a world building carries. Unlike the world of Blom or the Girl's Last Tour, this world is inhabited. There is life that still exists here, but only that the quest for control and dominance is too overbearing that the destruction is uncontrollably active. The world of Middle-earth is scarred, and as you pass through the landscapes, you can't help but notice how infected the whole world feels. Its beauty drained by the forces that operate to extinguish every ounce of it from this world. And I know that landscapes do take a backseat when it comes to the storytelling here, but this is a world that represents the active desolation of ours. And therefore, it only makes sense Tolkien had a clear idea in mind when he portrayed this kind of a world building. Having seen the unintended consequences of the Industrial Revolution, the nature of Middle-earth and its destruction as a result is simply the allegory that Tolkien found to express his concerns with the way humans treated nature. Even when Treebeard says,
"They come with fire, gnawing, biting, breaking, hacking, burning. Destroyers and usurpers, curse them."
it is simply the anger that Tolkien felt in how his village in England slowly changed from an idyllic natural paradise to essentially a world filled with smoke and soot. Nothing different from the descriptions of Isengard and Mordor. Once beautiful places, now taken over by greed and unrelenting search for power, and stuck in the middle of it all, a natural world crying out for help. In the world of Elden Ring, a similar story unfolds. There is undeniable beauty in these lands. The landscapes here are majestic. The trees climb into the skies, reaching for the stars. The lush green meadows breathing upon the flowing wind. The architecture leaving an everlasting impression, graced by the lands themselves. It is a type of beauty that persists. But this is in fact a facade. Because behind the elegance is a world that is eternally suffering, damned without salvation from the forces that rule over it. It is different to the post-apocalypse, because the world has not moved on from the tragedy. In fact, when you observe, this active suffering in and of itself is the tragedy of this world building. The world of Elden Ring was once an untamed natural world. It was ruled by the forces that belonged to the world. Dragons and giants, and people that could read destiny amongst the stars. It was never perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but what it had was balance. No matter how wild and unforgiving, it was a world that lived by the laws that already existed within it. But upon the arrival of the Greater Will and its agents, the world began taking a new shape. This cosmic intervention literally rewrites the rules of this world, leaving the world imbalanced and in many ways unnatural. and in removing the rune of death to grant immortality to the ones who rule it, the world reaches a breaking point. Death is now paused. Life is now paused. The name of the world itself, a name that bears the consequence of this action, the lands in between, a state of perpetual limbo. And you can see how this transpires while walking along the landscapes. The world is littered with spirits of the dead that can't quite move on to the afterlife. There are skeletons here that can't decompose, leading into an ecological collapse. There are mutated monstrosities of all nature, of all shapes and sizes that wander mindlessly through their never-ending lifespans. The world is now melancholic. It is in a way trying to accept, trying to live through the eternal suffering. Every landscape in this world is not just a location, it is a wound. Gods and cosmic forces that conspired and used the world like a chessboard. Caelid is now a rotting wasteland, the result of an uncontrollable force unleashed upon it in an act of desperation between the gods during war. Nokron and Nox, once great civilizations who talked to the stars, are now simply the ruins of a forgotten time, for they dared question the ways of the cosmic forces. In the crumbling Farum Azula, the debris of a city floats in an everlasting storm, a place that was pulled out of normal space and time itself by the greater powers that be. The mountains, once upon a time a prosperous land of the powerful giants, now merely a frozen battlefield, imprisoned by the New World Order. Everywhere you go, everywhere you look, you see the world carrying nothing but scars from its past. The beauty is trying to overcome, but it too struggles to keep up. As a traveler passing through these lands, you can only hold the power and control to be accountable for what they've done. You can only feel sympathy for the world building. So, when you look closely at all these worlds, the lands in between, the world of Middle Earth, the megacity of Blam, the silent landscapes of the Electric State, the toxic jungle, the alien world of Vesta, and the endless city where two girls wander at the end of humanity, you start to notice a pattern. Beyond the people who call these places home, these stories have a deeper connection to its lands. They are a reminder of what happens when power is misused, when civilizations crumble, when dreams fail, and when no one is left to care. Each world is a different type of tragedy. Each world is a different kind of wound. But in a strange kind of way, they're also kind and beautiful. Not because they have perfection, but in fact, they are beautiful because they persist. Through all the pain that they endured, they did not give up, they persevered. And you can't help but think that there is beauty in that. And through this, you can't help but sympathize, because after all, sympathy for fictional worlds is just sympathy for our own. Every broken landscape, every poisoned river, every abandoned city, every corrupt system, every forgotten empire, and every last tree waiting to be cut down in the forest. They're not just works of fiction, but they are a reflection of our world that is searching for meaning. And that's why you can't help but sympathize with the world building, because in learning to mourn for these imaginary worlds, you're just quietly mourning for your own.